Welcome to the review of Neuromancer. Neuromancer was created by Interplay Productions and released in 1988. It is loosely based on the novel by William Gibson. It is an adventure game that takes place in Chiba, Japan in 2058. It has a somewhat role-playing feel to it in the fact that you play as a named character, which is supposed to be yourself, and that you're a hacker. So you start the game roaming around in this restaurant, and if you try to leave, you're instantly arrested by a robot outside. And you're basically brought to a kangaroo court. There's a judge and there's an attorney on the screens. And no matter how you answer for a plea or respond, you're always told you're guilty. At this point, you have no idea what you're even arrested for. So basically, you can flip through the menu options of answers and choose how to answer the questions. There, the attorney laughs at us that we're found guilty. So then you get a chance to respond about the blatant miscarriage of justice. And of course the judge doesn't care. This game has a lot of comedy in it, which I'll be talking about soon. So it turns out that you owe the bill to this restaurant for food you ordered. So you have to pay before you leave. The game definitely has a big brother complex going on. So, in order to pay the bill, you simply click on your items, select credits, and give item. You also have the ability to check different statuses, such as the date, time, your constitution or hit points, and how much money you have. And the first introduction we have to comedy is the fact that the restaurant was closed by the health department. So you can move around to different screens, and if there's a gray square at the bottom, you can move to a screen to the south. The game has a very small feel to it. The city just feels very cramped. There's not a whole lot of areas to explore. That's probably the biggest setback for this game. You quickly reach the edge of the town, and you can't get through because there's a laser gate blocking the way. Now to some of the funny stuff. You can go into Donut World and see a cop in there. There's a lot of funny stereotypes in this game. Here we're introduced to the donut humor, and we get arrested by the cop. Back in the kangaroo court. You can find a place called the Cheap Hotel. Well, at least it's honest. But look where you have to sleep. You actually sleep in a coffin. For some reason I think this game is actually going to be pretty accurate about the future. You'll have a lot of misfortune in this game, such as paying this company Microsoft's a fee, and they just take your money and they don't give you anything in return. What a ripoff. There is a body part shop, and I'm not talking automotive, where you can actually sell some of your body parts and get plastic replacements. The amount of money you get for it is shown on the right, and the body part type is shown on the left. It's got a nice touch to it that you can sell your appendix and get 3 credits. So here we go. Sold my legs and arms. It doesn't actually affect your functionality, but it does decrease your constitution. And you're injured. And if we click on constitution here, you can see it going up over time as you recover. But as you sell the body parts, it lowers your maximum constitution. You do have the ability to buy back body parts that have been sold, which is kind of funny and interesting. But of course, it costs twice as much. And here's an LOL moment. There's the sign for Microsoft's. Hey, you want to buy some softs? You can of course get arrested in so many ways in this game. Even just for impersonating a cop, I got arrested instantly. Thrown back to kangaroo court. Or how about some subtle innuendos about a happy ending at a massage parlor? I'm sure I'll think of something. Look out, it's the Lawbot! There's also references to other things, such as a Three Stooges reference here. Larry Moe. Where's Curly? This is a funny response. Hey, maybe you can answer some questions for me. Sure, it'll be more fun than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. There's also funny references to Asian accents. Ah, you back. I have deck. Okay, I'm gonna say, I don't have the cash right now. I'll come back later. What? I no want deck. Here, take deck now. No charge. Go away. The comedy in this game is definitely one of its highlights. Another funny thing is the fact that these IDs are called Bama ID. And how predictive of the future is that? With Bama? Notice the infamous name of Fargo showing up there, which of course is reference to Brian Fargo, one of the developers, creators of many Interplay games. So the reason why we were able to get that deck was because we had a pawn ticket in our possession. You can also buy this joystick. Yeah, a joystick, which is treated as a religious item. You on the great quest for the holy joystick? So basically, if we offer it to this guy, he gives us something in return. Incidentally, you have this slot inside your head where you can insert chips, and it'll give you special skills. I guess that means you're a cyborg. So from the skills menu, you can actually see what skills you have. Some can actually be used, and others are kind of a passive type skill. Unfortunately, the game doesn't really tell you that when you click on it. So there's many different places where you can find these chips to implant and buy them. Money is really difficult to get in this game. The best way to get money is actually hacking into systems, which I'll show you later in the review. So here we buy some chips and then we implant them by operating them, and that gives us our skills. You can also buy all kinds of cyberspace type equipment, which is really cool. This game was way ahead of its time. I should mention that this game is very difficult, mainly because of the lack of knowledge of any of these items and the fact that it's so hard to get money in this game, and it's so easy to screw up. There's many different places in the game where you can buy chips, that's for sure. You can also buy software, which in some places they're calling softs. Here it's softwares with a Z. Software is actually utilized later when you're in cyberspace or you're trying to hack in. You do have the ability to discard items, especially ones that are damaged. And you also have the ability to erase software that's old. You can only store so much software, so that's the reason. There's also this public access system called PAX. It allows you to get into your initial bank account, read the bulletin board, check the news, etc. This game really has a King's Quest type feel to it. Of course, the world is much smaller, so that's not quite as enjoyable, but there is a lot of mystery. And the game has quite a few secret passages and secret rooms. It takes a while to figure all this out. And there are some moments that brings me back to like King's Quest 3 where you had to type in the spells real quick. You only have a certain amount of time. And that's how I felt at this moment, where I only got 30 seconds to do the right thing. Here we have to type in a special number, and we only have a certain amount of time. Now back to the PAX system. You can look at the bulletin board system, and you can see private messages and you can send messages. It's really interesting. It almost feels like a real BBS from the 80s, where you'd log in or dial up to someone and from that BBS server leave messages for them. This was before the internet, of course. If you find a room that has a wall jack, you can actually jack in and use a comm link. I'm guessing this is similar to just dialing up to a bulletin board system. You always need access codes and passwords to do this. Each server you connect to usually has different options, which gives it a nice feel. Sometimes you have to go to a special cyberspace jack in order to connect to a specific server. So this is where you end up spending a lot of time in the game, and where the detective work starts to come in play. Basically, you have to connect to all these different links, as they're called, and try to find new passwords, try to get clues by reading through messages that are left. Sometimes they're left to you specifically, and other times they're just left to different participants in the game. You can sometimes log in and hack account balances so that you don't have to pay for things, or that you can actually get money. Here we're actually ordering room service, and then we're turning around and crediting it back to our account. Really makes you think more about Bitcoin, doesn't it? Of course, Bitcoin is actually very protected, so it doesn't have these issues, but still, it's just kind of funny that they had this back in 1988. So a lot of the software you can get, you can actually download for free by logging into a special type of server. Of course, you have to do all the detective work and figure out how, but then go into their software library. Here we're downloading the next version of Comlink. So then it appears in your list and you can use that. Allow you to connect to a different server. Now we're in the Software Enforcement Agency. Ah, and look, Comlink 4, there you go. Moving on to Comlink 5. There is a time when hardware failures just seem to happen at random. You can keep trying to operate the item and it keeps failing. Then all of a sudden it'll work. It's scary how much this game predicts the future. So you'll spend more time downloading software. And as you can see, this gets quite tedious. You can read supervisor memos in order to harness more information. And some servers may allow you to upgrade a few skills, such as cop talk. Of course, I didn't have it, so I couldn't upgrade it. You can read some funny memos, such as this one referring to Mr. DOS. Some of you may be too young to remember what DOS is, but for those in the 80s, that would be quite entertaining. You can view order statuses. It's kind of a little cyber world wrapped up inside a game. Very entertaining. There's also notes of interest sometimes here at Copenhagen University. And what's it talking about? The polar bears. And here's the news at Copenhagen. Yeah, that's funny. It's nice how it shows a date and a subject in the news when you're trying to read it. Very much like a bulletin board system or email. So as you're reading through the topics, we notice, hey, wait a minute, vagrant pays hotel bill? What is this? Here it actually mentions your name, Daryl. That's pretty funny. You can also find messages sent specifically to you. It really helps you feel like you're involved in the game and actually going through the events. You can also log into the IRS service and check out the audit list. Oh, Daryl's wanted for tax evasion. He must have been a Tea Party target. You can hack into bank accounts and get extra credits transferred. Here we're transferring from one bank to another. $30,000 credits. Boom. Bozo Bank. Let's download them all. Nice. There's a special kind of software called the sequencer that can actually break some of the passwords to get into some systems. This is pretty funny. Them hacks. It is confusing, the difference between links and cyberspace, because they keep using different names at different times. So here I use the cyberspace item, but then Comlink software, and it asks if I want to use a link code or enter cyberspace. What the heck? So of course I already showed how you get into links, and that gets you to specific servers. But the other option is to go the cyberspace route. So here we're using our cyberspace 7 item, choosing Comlink 6, and then entering cyberspace. This is a whole different world. This is where you actually move around and try to enter databases. You can see it's on a grid type setup. You can see your X and Y position at the bottom changing over time. I should mention that while you're linked up or you're in cyberspace, it actually costs money over time. But if you actually use the cyberspace software with the cyberspace item, then it's free. Your money does not go down over time. So here we're going to try to hack into a database. And incidentally, this really reminds me of Tron. If you haven't seen the original movie, then you won't know what I'm talking about. But this reminds me of the Master Control program, where at the end where Flynn and Tron are trying to break into it. So anyway, you use what's called icebreakers in order to have access. And each time you try to enter a database, the type of icebreaker that is optimal will change. Which is nice because it helps to bring randomness to the game. Now you'll notice that it's actually hurting me at the same time. My damage is that middle bar that's running vertically that shows green halfway up. The damage that the server has taken is the bar further to the right. So the whole goal is to actually damage and destroy and get in before it destroys you. On the right you can see that little green line moving up and down. Kind of like when you're in a hospital and they're monitoring your vitals. Well, that's the same thing. You can actually flatline. Since it's green right now, we're okay. There's no risk of us actually dying yet. It starts to turn yellow and then later red. Your software can actually get damaged when you're trying to break in too. If you're getting close to dying, you can actually exit and flee the combat. So what exactly happens when you flatline? Well, this is going to take a few minutes to show you, but I'll fast forward for a second here. Notice the line's green. Now it changed to yellow. You know you're in trouble now because it's red. Okay, so you wake up in the body shop and your brain was kick-started. Of course, you lose all the money you had in your pocket. And let me tell you, you're going to end up dying a lot in this game. The servers, especially some of them, are so hard to break into. Now there are other types of ways to break in. You can use what's called a virus. Here's one called Thunderhead. And when you use that, you'll notice that it changes from blue to green. So now it's infected and our icebreakers will do more damage. The viruses only last for a certain period of time though, and then they disappear and turns blue again. There's another type of software called jammies, which causes the server to basically freeze for a few seconds, and then you could attack it with your icebreakers. It really doesn't give you too much time. There's also slow software, which slows down the attack of the server on you. You can see the bolt that's flying towards us is going to go much slower. In fact, you can use a combination. You could also infect it with the virus at the same time. For some of the more difficult servers, you'll have to do these types of things. Use a bunch of combinations in order to survive. When software becomes damaged, it actually has a hyphen next to it. Luckily, you can use what's called the Dixie flatline, and you can debug the software if you have the debug skill, which again you get from a chip. You can also analyze software, which will tell you what it is. Here we can see blowtorch is an icebreaker. So again, if you have the software debug skill and the software is damaged, you can try to repair it. Fixed blowtorch. Fixed decoder. Failed on comlink. For some reason, some software fails all the time to debug. Other times you can keep trying and then all of a sudden it'll work. You can also repair the software outside the cyber world. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of skills in this game, but it can be kind of frustrating because you don't know when to use them or what they do. Here I use Zen and it doesn't say anything. So was it effective? I have no idea. Cyberspace does have a limit to how far you can go. You can't go below 16 for coordinates. There's also an upper limit. The game utilizes at the maximum 16 colors because it can be EGA. I found the sound quite lacking, but the graphics were okay for the time. So overall, what do I think about this game? Well, it was actually somewhat tedious. A lot of things that I got tired of doing all the time, like downloading software, trying to find the software to use. I also felt like the world was kind of cramped as far as size. The cyberspace definitely expanded the world, and so do all the links. But you start looking at the same screens, you know, this white plain screen or the grid. The music's a nice touch. I did find myself humming it and couldn't get it out of my head. If you were a member of the bulletin board days and you didn't play this game, I highly recommend it. It'll bring back a lot of memories for you. And if you like very challenging detective type games, you will love this. I hope you enjoyed this review, and see you next time.